and internationally under the specific lens of gender equity and diversity. During the past 31 years, the IWMF has been fortunate to mentor, train, and celebrate the bravest and most nuanced voices in the news media. We're thrilled to share our conversations with the world's leading journalists through this series. It is beyond fitting to have Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour, kick off this series for the IWMF. Judy is a founding co-chair of the International Women's Media Foundation, an organization she established to promote and support women in journalism and the news industry worldwide. Thank you, Judy. She will be speaking to Ingrid and Joachim Wahl, the parents of supremely talented journalist Kim Wahl, whose voice was silenced all too soon. Ingrid has written a book about Kim's life and work, A Silenced Voice, The Life of Journalist Kim Wahl. They established the Kim Wahl Memorial Fund administered by the IWMF to carry on Kim's legacy by providing fellowships to aspiring women and women-identifying journalists who report in Kim's spirit. Thank you for joining us and helping us to learn more about Kim's life and work. Before we move on to the discussion, let's watch a brief video about Kim, which was produced by her friends.
Hi, my name is Kim Wahl. Currently in the middle of the Pacific on the Lady E, a Marshallese government supply ship, on my way back from Venezuela Castle, where I've been reporting on the nuclear waste site threatened by climate change. This is exactly the kind of stories I like to do, where you combine on the ground, shoe letter reporting with foreign policy language. Hopefully carve out a space for myself in the male-dominated world that is foreign policy. Thank you.
Kim was an artist and a storyteller in every sense.
She seemed to be utterly and uniquely unafraid of going into uncharted territories.
She had wanderlust in droves, and it hung off her every word.
Kim had an infectious curiosity that was almost childlike in nature, full of innocence and goodwill.
She grabbed every opportunity she could. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Along the way, her life became an adventure.
The world through Kim's eyes was a rare and special perspective. She didn't shy away from tough questions.
My friend Kim wrote stories that transformed cultural anthropology into popular narratives.
She made going from continent to continent look like it was no big deal.
We complain often that journalism lacks creativity and depth, but Kim had so much of both.
She told human stories. In the same way she lived her life, she told them with grace, dignity, and joyous care for our shared experiences.
I remember when she told me about her upbringing. Both of her parents were journalists, and she had often accompanied them on small reporting trips. That's why she's so good, I thought.
Kim would have wanted more women out in the world, brushing up against life.
She gave voice to the weak, the vulnerable and marginalized people. That voice has been needed for a long time. Now it will not be.
Hello, everybody. I am Judy Woodruff, and it is such an honor to be part of this IWMF Press Freedom series and to be able to speak with the parents of Kim Wahl. Joachim Wahl and Ingrid Wahl are joining us from their home in Sweden, and I believe they are here with us visually as well as in an audio sense. So I want to welcome them and ask them to say a word before we begin our conversation. Welcome to you both, Ingrid and Joachim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to take part of this. It's an honor for us.
We are, I can't see you, so I'm hoping others can. You may need to click on something that says allow video so we can all see you. There you are, there you are. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you. First of all, tell us where you are. You're at your home in Sweden. Tell us where you are.
We are living in Trelleborg, the southernmost town in Sweden. It's along the Baltic shore, and we are about 35 kilometers from the bridge to Denmark. So we are very, very close to Denmark.
And Joachim, you said we know you're the photographer in the family. Ingrid has been the writer, the journalist. Both of you are journalists. I would love to have both of you talk a little bit about how you met, your careers, because it so informed the life of Kim. But tell us a little bit about how you got to know each other and your work as journalists first.
I was 16 years old and Joachim was 19 when we met. And at that time he worked as in the printing office of the local newspaper. And one of the benefits that he had was that he was going to the local cinema twice every week and looking at the new movies at the cinema. And you could go for free if you write a little 10, 12 lines in the local newspaper about the movie. So, and in the beginning he was doing the writing, but then he suddenly understood that I could do it faster, so he gave me that work.
So
and
that was the start of her career.
That was at the beginning. So yeah, and we've been working in the media since then. So I think it was inevitable that both Kim and her brother Tom have to, even if we told them, be whatever, be an accountant, be whatever, but don't go into media business. But who listened to their parents? They didn't, none of them.
Both of them landed in the same business.
Both of them. Tom works as a journalist, is that right?
Yes.
A photographer.
I mean, as a photographer, as a photojournalist.
Yes.
The reason I wanted you to share this with everyone is because it's very clear that as Kim grew up and you took her around, you write in the book about how she grew up part of her life in newsrooms or on the scene with you. You took vacations in places where you'd be working on a story. I mean, at one point, I think she said it was her graduation speech where she said she wasn't sure whether the vacation drove the story or the story drove the vacation. But you did travel with her a lot. She saw the world as a child, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yes. Both of them.
We took them over the Atlantic to North and South America 4 times before they go to Stockholm the first time. So for us, it was more important to show them America than to show them the Swedish capital.
So she grew up familiar with the world, didn't she, Joachim?
Yes, of course. She has been around us all the time, and when she was newborn, we have this daddy free from work for a couple of months, so we can stay with our kids at home. And I was engaged in the union, for journalist union in Sweden, and my work as well. And I took her with me, and that was the first time anybody did that. And she was crawling around in the floor, and we had a meeting, and everybody thought that was good. And it was not the last time.
You were way ahead of your time. We're beginning to see that today in the United States, but you were way ahead of your time. So as she grew up, and you write about this so beautifully in the book, Ingrid, about how her interests were varied, how she started writing when she was quite young, and then as she grew up, her interest in telling these stories and exploring the world began to take shape, didn't it?
Exactly, but in the beginning, she had her thoughts to going into diplomacy because she thought that could be the way to make difference for less fortunate people than us in Sweden. But after working for half a year in the EU mission New Delhi, India, then she decided that journalism was a much better way to tell stories that are urgent to be told.
It's interesting how she came to that decision. She had been to the London School of Economics, and then later, of course, Columbia for her graduate degree. She made the turn to journalism for a very clear reason. Explain what that was.
She wants to tell the stories for making herself a voice for people who doesn't have one. She was not at least interested in presidents and kings and so on. She wanted to tell the story about the little people, the one who normally never goes to becoming headlines or becoming TV news. So, and she took a good time to learn to know the people that she was portraying. And she said that if they give me the responsibility to tell the stories, then she was very, very keen that it will be right for every letter, that she really would do them justice.
Where do you think that came from inside her, that strong interest in hearing from people who otherwise didn't have a voice?
I think she had it with her as a little kid, and she was always taking care of small animals, birds and so on. So she was always very incredibly curious, and she wants to really make a difference. If it was a hedgehog or whatever it was, so it was so essential for her to do the right thing.
And Joachim, she talked to the two of you openly about this, didn't she? I mean, there's some of us who are trying to break away from our parents as we figure out what we want to do for a career. But I sense that there were many conversations with the two of you about it.
Sure. And we always told her and Tom, don't be a journalist, don't be a photographer. Okay. But we talked a lot of things. We had 6-7 newspapers in the morning, so on the breakfast table we were reading and we were discussing who was doing good and why this wasn't so good, and what we felt about the products our colleagues did, and what we have done ourselves, and what we could have done better, or if it was good. So we were talking about that as well. And I think that was kind of educating her to get into the business as a good journalist. So,
Ingrid, you spoke about how after she worked in India, she realized at that point what she wanted to do. Talk a little bit about her early experiences as a reporter and why she traveled to the places she did. I mean, at some point she ended up going to Sri Lanka. I mean, so she was in Asia. She wasn't content to stay on the European continent. She wanted to see the world.
Yes, and she didn't want to go to the mainstream places. She's never been to one of these typical youth islands in the Greece or something like that. She wasn't interested at all because she wanted to see the other side. She went on a motorbike in Myanmar for a couple of weeks once, and she got alone on a train in southern China up in the mountains, and she always found those very odd ways of travel. And when she called us and said, "Now I am going this or there," and we said, "Oh," and I remember once when she asked me, "Do you think I should go to Kabul or should I go to Lebanon?" And we said, "Why go to another place?" And sure. So it ended up in Lebanon. And the same when she called us and said that she was going to North Korea. and we saw it's North Korea, is that a good place to go, becoming a journalist and so on. And she said, "Mother, you must understand that's the safest place on earth to be." And she came back from North Korea with great stories, and that was the same when she got to Uganda or Haiti and so on. And she was always very she wanted to stay very close to the people she was portraying, and that was not always the easiest way to travel, and not always the safest way either.
I mean, it's remarkable because you're ticking off places in just a span of a few years that she traveled to that many journalists never have the chance. I mean, to get to North Korea, much less Sri Lanka, plus Lebanon, plus, you know, and the list goes on. Did she model her work after someone else? Clearly, she looked up to the two of you. Did she talk about what kind of work someone's work she admired, or was she really truly forging her own path?
I think
so.
She was making her own way, and she was always very determined. And if she had set something to do, and no way how problematic that could be, she had decided to do something, then she did it. And it was not always the easiest way, but she never give up.
No.
Where did that come from? Where did that fearlessness and that never give up, where did that come from, do you think?
I think in some way she must have inherited from us and from our parents and so on. So yeah.
And I can tell you, but if we back up the timeline now to when she was small in her school, less than 10 years something, we went to Australia. We flew to Cairns, and we had a car and make camping down to Sydney. That was over months we were out with. And when we come home again, she had to make a report for the school, for the class, and it was so good. So her the teachers were looking at it, and they decided that she could hold a speech for the older classes in the school. And she did that, and she had this little book she had made herself. And when she graduated from high school here in Sweden, her teacher, Katarina, came to the party we had for her and handed over this book, and it is incredible. So
oh my gosh!
She had something she wanted to report in an honest way.
She was 7 years at that time.
Yeah.
So
she was 7.
Yeah, 7. It was in first grade. So it was the book that, or what to say. It's a mixture of drawings and writing. So, but really at that time she knew what she wanted to do in life.
We should mention, of course, that she was a girl, a woman. To what extent did she talk to you? Did she think about how women have to be more careful when they're reporting, or whether women aren't given the opportunities that men are given? How much did she think about all that?
We talked a lot about it, because I had not the same experience as her, but being a female journalist, and we were talking a lot about how important it is that more articles the world over should be made by by females. And she was very happy to continue that struggle, because she thought that at least half of the articles should have female bylines. So she was struggling very hard for that, and she thought it wasn't easy with her line of business to go into this very male-dominated area, but that even make her more determined to do it.
Did she did she face from her editors, the people who she was talking to about publishing her work, did she ever feel discrimination because she was a woman?
Oh yes, many times, and but she and Kim and her female journalist friends, they had some kind of network, and I was very I liked it very much because they helped each other, even if they should be competitors about being published, but they helped each other. I think this story is better for you, and they also have a warning system that this editor, be aware, he is
in some way,
yeah,
something.
It could be indifferent. He's not calling back. He's not holding his words, and even if physical things. So they were really, and I hope this will continue, because female journalists have to be strong together. That's the only way if they should really make a difference into journalism.
You know, I could not agree with you more. And I think that that's a feature of this generation of women journalists, this younger generation of women journalists, I think network together much better than, say, my generation did, where, you know, there were fewer of us and we were probably competing more. And I think what's so wonderful about Kim's generation is these journalists do talk to each other. They do trade information. And it makes them stronger, and it gives them more opportunity as a group.
And I think she got a lot of this feeling when she got to Columbia University, and I think she had a great education there.
And belonging to the IWMF family was also very important for her, because then they could share a lot of things, and they were all more or less in the same situation. So she was so very fond of being in that family.
How much did she talk about, you know, working freelance versus being connected to a big news organization? How much did she think about that? Did that affect her work, do you think?
I think that she wanted, at least at this part of her life, she wanted to be free and do the stories. That was important for her. The stories were more important than earning a lot of money, because that she just didn't know. But I think for her, the stories was the main thing. That maybe if she would have lived, I think that later on in life, then she could be a very good staff reporter, because she was so extremely well educated.
At the same time, we know that for freelance journalists, they have to have their own network. I mean, if they go into a country they haven't been to before, or to a place, or connect with people, it's important for them to network and to know where they're going, and to have a little more background.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But she was very keen on that, doing a good research before. And she wasn't naive in any way. And I remember one night she was calling from Havana, Cuba. And before she went there, she had rented her Airbnb apartment, because she wanted to live close to the people she was portraying. But that late night call, she said, I'm not feeling sure. Can you wire money so that I can go into in a hotel instead? So she was not naive in any way, but and I think that yeah.
Are there favorite? I mean, there's so much work that she did that's so remarkable. But for each one of you, I'd like to hear from you what reporting she did that struck a particular chord with you. What about you, Joachim?
Marshall Island, the story that Kim and Colleen and Henrik did together, the three of them, that was the biggest, the most touching story is the story about the female warriors, soldiers for the Tamils that lost the war and what's happened
In Sri Lanka.
in Sri Lanka. And the story is incredible, and she did so much research and risked her life there, and it's really touching. It's a good story, and it's a story about the women that otherwise don't mention.
Never are mentioned.
No.
And how did she get them to open up to her?
I think because she was very small. She was a little tiny, girlish, and I think that no one could be afraid of her because she was. She made friends more than the journalism interview way. I think she made a good friends with her reporting, and we have had a lot of evidence of that later, because we have been in contact with a lot of her she had interviewed, and they said that they see Kim as a friend. And I think that because she take good time to really listen, and I think she was, and we have especially heard of when she traveled in the north of Sri Lanka, in the Tamil country, and it wasn't allowed for journalists to go there because it was still just after the war, the Civil War. But no one took Kim for a journalist because she looks like just a tiny little girl who was a little bit lost in. So she fooled them all.
And you know about that because that's been sometimes when she got with a bus to us from the train station or wherever she come. And she said, I took a child ticket, but you're 20, more than 20, you can't do that. Oh, nobody knows that I am so young. So that's the way she looks very, very...
She looked very innocent, and that's, I think, that fooled some. So, but she got out with her stories.
But it was part of her presentation. I mean, you made the point. There was nothing naive about Kim. Ingrid, what about you? Do you have a favorite among the many things that Kim wrote?
I think that Marshall Islands is the most important because it's a ticking bomb, and the people living at the Marshall Islands, they have been so extremely bad treated during for so many years. And if you look at the pictures, it seems they are living in paradise, but they can't eat the fish, they can't grow anything. They're just depending on supply ship from US. And I think also the stories from North Korea. And I'm not sure she wrote about it, but she told me that when she came back, that it was very hard to speak with young Korean girls because they didn't speak any English. But one day she was sitting in a park with a couple of young girls, and they were absolutely fascinating because she had red nails. In North Korea, there aren't any nail polish at all. So, and this little group, they found each other through Kim's red nails. And that tells a lot that people all over the world, even if you are from North Korea, then you want to have red nails.
It's a remarkable quality that she clearly had, that made her, that made people want to talk to her, to get to know her, and to open up to her. Yeah. I mean, that's a gift. That's truly a gift. Yes. To make people feel comfortable and safe talking to you. It's what the best journalists have, and I think that's what we're going to take questions from the audience, all of you who are watching and listening, in just a moment. But I want to talk to you about what you think Kim wanted. You've spoken about how she wanted to tell the stories of those who wouldn't have a chance to have their stories told. And I wrote down a line from the video. She wanted to brush up against life. What do you think, if Kim were alive today, what would she want journalists to be doing right now? What do you think?
Oh, it's not an easy question to say, but I'm pretty sure that I know that she had been on the side for the weak ones. If it had been in Hong Kong, or if it's been Black Lives Matter movement, or the squatters in Brazil, or whatever, she had found the stories about the small ones and try to give them a voice. I'm pretty sure. And she told us that after the last election in the US, she said, now I'm moving to China, because it's there everything will happen in the future. And she was right. Of course, she was right.
For sure, with what we're watching right now in Hong Kong and what China's doing. And you mentioned Black Lives Matter. Maybe she would even have wanted to travel to the United States to do some reporting on it here, or maybe in Europe.
Definitely. And in January 2017, the day after the inauguration of the president, she went to this women's march in Washington, and she marched together with Chinese women, and she did the whole march with these Chinese women. So I think that was so typical Kim, that she found a way to do things, not in the mainstream way, because she found her own way to do it, and that was a good story as well.
Why did she want to participate in that march?
I think for her it was absolutely, it was no way not to be in a march for women and for women's rights. I think it was no question about it.
Joachim, you too. We see the V sign. Tell us about that and where that came from.
Oh, when this disaster was, we started a Facebook group, a closed group with friends of Kim and the family of her. And there are a lot of those participating. And one time I asked them if they could send a picture of themselves, so we knew them. They knew us through Kim, but we haven't met them. People all from the whole world, and I asked them if they should send some pictures of her and themselves together, and we got hundreds of pictures, and every picture Kim did this sign, and she had tried to do that at home as well when I took pictures of her, and I said, no, don't do that. I'm serious. I don't like to have this kind of signs in my pictures, because I would have good shots of you. And maybe she make a fun of it and did this, and I didn't want it. And I don't have so many of those pictures, but when we saw that she did this sign, we said, this is a sign from Kim, for Kim. And Ole, her fiancé in Copenhagen, he did an artwork of it, and that's after a picture of her, and we made this pin that we give to people that deserve it, and you can't buy it.
And so for us, it was it's the sign for Kim's fund, and for us it's the Kim sign, and it means peace, and it means and victory, and for that Kim was struggling for both things.
For sure, and you raised the Kim Wall Fund, through which the two of you have are ensuring Kim's legacy. And maybe you want to talk about why that's important before we turn it back over to Elisa with some questions from our other viewers.
It's very important for us because this is a way that we could send other young female journalists out in the world to do the stories that Kim can't write. And that gives, in this tragedy, it gives some meaning to us that Kim's way of working in journalism, it can continue through the fund. And we have already sent out 6 young journalists to do stories in Kim's spirit. So, and that gives us a good feeling.
Well, for sure. And anyone who's interested can go to the IWMF website to read about these young women and their work, who they are, there are pictures of them and a little bit about them. So it's such an important legacy.
And the meaning of all is that we will let people remember Kim as a good journalist,
yes.
Not an author of a crime.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation that we've been having with you about Kim and her life and what she believed and what she did and why she did it, which is so important for us to hear. Such an honor for me. Elisa, you've been picking up questions.
Yes, absolutely. One of our viewers writes, I read that Kim wanted to write about the undercurrents of rebellion. What were her rebellions?
Oh, in the teens, she was very rebellious. So, and she was always taking the side of the one who was in or is in minority. She, yeah, the small ones.
Right. I have a couple of. Sorry.
I remember that she had such a lovely red tainted brown hair. It was lovely. And one day she came home, it was black.
Typical for a 14, 15 year old.
That was one of her.
But it's only happened once.
Yes.
So.
Another question, we touched on it a little bit, but somebody would like to know what you think Kim would be interested in covering today. Where would Kim be reporting from right now?
China, and definitely right now the southern parts of US.
Maybe in Pakistan,
India,
and
northern India.
Yes.
The conflict with China. She was always saying that the next big war will be about water. It will be about water in Asia, and I think she's right.
She was prescient about that, given what's going on right now between China and India. Of course, it's in the remote Himalayas where it's happening.
Yeah. A couple of questions about the book itself. Somebody would love to know how you wrote the book, Ingrid, and what were the challenges of writing it, and what was the best part of writing it?
It began as a journalist. You have the habit of doing these notes all the time. And during the first crazy days when everything was upside down, I did, of course, all these notes. And after a while, I realized that this could be a book, at least for the closest family. And writing it was laughter and it was tears, especially when I wrote about Kim, because then I have to go back in the memory and write about her. So it was not always tears, because it was a lot of laughter as well, because I came to remember a lot of different episodes. And for me, it's been a healing process to write the book, because it's easier to put things down on paper or in the computer than to talk about it. It's not so easy to talk about feelings, and especially, as I've said before, that there are no manual for parents whose daughter has been killed. So this has been a way for us to handle this absolutely absurd situation.
It's such an effective way to convey her life. I think you have the story, of course, of what happened in her, but interspersed throughout that is her life. And it just comes across in a very powerful way, the way you chose to tell her story.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. What would you like people to take away from the book itself?
I think the most important thing is that even if you are struck by a disaster like this, you should not fall into this big black hole, because there are still things in life that's important for you. And for us, we have Tom, and we have soon a grandchild, and we have the dog, and we have friends and families, and so on. So the life must go on. And for us, that is the most important thing, that you could still enjoy a good dinner, or you can enjoy walking on the beach with Iso, our dog, and so on. So that's, even if you are struck by this terrible thing, that there is light in the end of the tunnel, definitely.
I'm going to hold up a picture of the book for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's a wonderful picture of Kim.
And it's taken off by Tom 2 years before for byline pictures that Kim wanted to have. So she should have the credit for it. Tom.
But it's a book that never should have been written if we had anything. Yeah.
You'd much rather have Kim.
Absolutely.
But the picture, you were saying the photograph was taken by her brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that. We have one more, I think, important question to end on that I think is a very good question to end on, which is, outside of her journalistic legacy, how can we all carry on Kim's honor in our day-to-day lives?
Be honest, be curious, and do the right thing. Absolutely. And on August the 10th, run for Kim, wherever in the world you are. Because that's one way for us to maybe not celebrate the 10th of August, which was the day when she disappeared, but it's a day that we will concentrate on life and not on death. And that's a way for us to bring some more money into the fund. And the more money that's in the fund, the more female journalists we can send out in the world to do the Kim stories.
And that's an organized thing, right? The run?
Yes, if you don't have to organize it, you can run wherever you are, and then you could just give a sum of money to the Kim Wall Memorial Fund. So, but here in Sweden, not this year because of the corona, but otherwise the first year we were over 600 people in our very, very small little village. And last year we were 300. And I know there is a lot of people who will run wherever in the world they are. And in Beijing and New York and a lot of places, Kim's friends are running, and they are used to run the same path that Kim runs. Yeah. So run for Kim wherever you are on 10th of August.
That's really wonderful. That's really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That is all of our questions. I want to thank you, Ingrid and Joachim, for sharing the life story of your remarkable daughter. Judy, thank you very much for helping us to learn more about Kim and for kicking off these important conversations. Thank you all for joining us. You may purchase the book by clicking on the link provided in the chat. As was mentioned, parts of the proceeds will go directly to the Kim Wall Memorial Fund. Please join us on July 22nd for another lunchtime conversation with the founder of the 19th, Emily Ramshaw, and the 19th editor-at-large, Erin Haynes, for a conversation about the importance of diversity in political reporting. Thank you all again. Thank you, Vols. So wonderful to see you. Judy, such a pleasure. Everybody have a great day and please stay safe.
It's a great honor. Thank you. Wonderful to see both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That makes it. Yeah, that's good. Fine.
Take care. Good night.
Take care.
Thanks. Låter bra.